All right, hi guys. So what we're doing right now is we're doing a Twitter space, or essentially we're kind of in a live stream, which is collaborative. We're gonna let you know when we're gonna do more of this, but I'm here with Nick. Say hi, Nick.
Hello.
So yeah, like this is at the same time just recorded for YouTube, which is where you're watching this. And just kind of to let you know, like we're starting this project Tana Central, and it's kind of a collaborative thing that Nick and I are both doing is a community to help you learn Tana in the best possible way. Oh, quick side note, if you do want to join us in our community, it's available for free and you'll find it in the description of this video. And I hope to see you there. So yeah, my name is Santi. If you haven't seen me before, I've been doing YouTube for like over a decade and I've been just kind of making a living for the past 3 years or so, teaching people productivity software. And it started for me with Obsidian, but then I moved quite heavily into Tana. So right now, really, Tana is the main tool that I use. And that's what I've been doing for the past year. So yeah, Nick, if you can introduce yourself, that'd be really cool.
Yeah. So I've, for the last 12 or 13 years, been usually a product designer of something like that, UX, UI designer. I founded a couple companies. And as far as like my experience with Tana, yeah, I've been using Tana for over a year now, probably like 14 months or so. And it's just, it's amazing, not only what it is, but what's possible in the future because of how it's architected and just the granular level. It's very similar to if you are a designer, you're listening to this right now, you're a designer and you're familiar with design systems and the atomic design systems where everything is like reduced until you're focused on the absolute bare essential tiniest little thing, and then you build everything from there. Tana is like that because everything is a node, and then now every piece of information is a node. Since you have that, you can create anything. You can do anything from any piece of information from there. So yeah, that's me, and that's my take on Tana.
Nice, man. Yeah, so what we're going to do in this kind of introductory show is, as you can see here, we are running a Tana, not a Tana, a Twitter space, right? So kind of a live stream, kind of a collaborative thing. So for instance, I saw that AJ Berry joined. So AJ, if you want at any point, you can request to speak if you do have any questions. So yeah, Nick, anything that stands out to you as like something cool that you like to talk about?
Well, I know that for one thing, I don't remember. I think it was a couple weeks ago. They introduced the you type in the slash to get options for things to do without needing to like select anything, move your mouse, or do any Command K or anything. And so that's very natural, and it fits. It aligns really well with other products like Notion or Confluence. Since I used to be at Atlassian, that's very familiar, being able to access those things just through one keystroke. So I think that's a really big deal for making Tana more accessible for people who are just trying to understand Tana when they're just getting into it, which is a huge deal. And Tana is such a powerful program, and people, we were just talking with one of the members in Tana Central, our community, and he confirmed something that I have a theory about. Just Tana is so powerful and there's so much that you can do. I don't know if you've ever played board games, but in board games, there's this thing called analysis paralysis, where you just have this weight of the decision on you. And there's so many pieces of information and so many ways that you could do things that you analyze, and never do. And I think that's a thing that people have problems with a lot in Tana, is that there's all these possibilities. And you don't want to do anything wrong, and so you don't do anything, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense. Analysis paralysis, like just ever read business in personal life, like you just want to. Sometimes it's like almost like what if I did something different, right? Or what are all the possibilities that I could follow? And then you're just stuck not knowing which decision to make because of so many choices. And I agree, like Tana definitely feels like that. It can definitely feel kind of like an empty canvas that you don't know what to do with at the beginning, or maybe the perfectionism kicks in and you want to make sure that you start everything super clean, everything perfect, and you don't have any clutter. But something I do like about Tana quite a lot is that it allows you to experiment, and even if you don't end up using some aspect of your system, the system carries on and the system keeps working. So yeah, like what was it like for you, Nick, when you got started with Tana? did you migrate from some other tool and import all of your data, or was it, you started fresh?
The last like real tool that I think is kind of comparable to Tana that I used before trying Tana was Roam Research. And there were some really great things about Roam Research. But for one thing, it's really only about note taking and just dumping information. And, you got connections that form and everything. And it was really nice also to be able to like just type parentheses, type something in, and then you create a reference. But then like that's all that you can do is but it's a great thing. So I hate saying that's
Right.
all that you can do. But yeah, it's kind of limited in that respect, and it's kind of clunky in the user experience. And yeah, I tried out Notion a bit, and for me,
Right.
like Notion and Tana, those are the two most closely aligned comparables of as far as products, because there's so much that you can do in Notion. And but the one difference is Notion is a lot more approachable. But like I said earlier, I think that Tana, because of how it's made, how it's built, the sky really is the limit with what you can do. But then that kind of comes back around to the analysis paralysis and everything, which I think
Yeah.
one thing for people, if you can get past that stage, if you realize, if you find the ways that you can be messy in Tana, but still make progress, I think that'll unlock so many layers of potential for people in Tana.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when I first got started, I didn't really want to import from other apps because I know a lot of people kind of like like maybe from Rome or maybe from Notion, they kind of bring all of their data, but they haven't really understood what are the strengths of Tana, so they kind of end up cluttering things a lot more than they need to. So I am not a big fan of like importing all of your data. Some people even wait for that feature to even be available in order to use Tana. But I just think, in my opinion, it's a lot better to, kind of take it easy, start understanding what are the strengths of the tool, what is the best possible structure, and then really making the most of those advantages. Was it like that for you? Like, did you just start, just kind of like without importing things? What was?
Well, definitely it was like that for me, but it wasn't ever a temptation for me because I don't think I've really ever had like that great system in any other
Right.
softwares. Like Roam Research, I used for a couple months, and that was it. And then it was just like Google Docs and all sorts of things where it's very like there is
Yep.
no particular structure for things like that. And so I was never tempted to do that or to wait until I could import everything. So it's a little different case for me, but I think that you're still right. Like even if you do have that structure from previous things, previous software, that it's best to just kind of dive in and swim a little bit in Tana and understand how because it is really different. The power comes from partially not just the technology, but you have to shift your mindset a bit for you to really understand. Because instead of walking, you're swimming now. That might be
Right.
a decent metaphor, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. Yeah, like because for me, like I do come a lot from the world of Obsidian. So in Obsidian, I would say, I mean, yeah, I definitely had a really powerful system that had like thousands and thousands of nodes. So obviously, like again, like kind of removing that temptation a little bit, like Tana didn't really have a very built-in way to move things from Obsidian. Just because it's kind of a different structure, it's a different system, it's all just a bunch of files. Versus Tana really is just kind of a node within a node within a node. It's just all bullet points, right? So yeah, like the whole way in which like Tana structures things has been very different from some of the tools that I was familiar with. So yeah, like I think that has definitely been kind of like the path that I've taken. Yeah. By the way, I hear Jack, but you can bring him on the screen so that people see him. Jack is Jack Sparrow, right? So can you introduce who Jack Sparrow is?
He just flew up to his cage, but if for the people who will be
Yeah,
watching this on YouTube later, yeah, you can see in the background he's eating on some of the seeds right now.
nice. So is he Jack the Sparrow or Jack Sparrow?
Just Jack Sparrow, yeah.
Jack Sparrow.
He's
That's
very,
perfect.
very unassuming like that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's really cool because Dick looks like a pirate. Sometimes it just goes on his shoulder, flies to the camera. It's really cool. We'll definitely feature him in future videos when you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah. So yeah, Nick, I mean, I was curious because one thing that really attracted me to Tana at the very beginning was like, okay, maybe they don't have the most efficient system of importing all of my Obsidian into Tana, but I definitely wanted to make sure that I wouldn't feel trapped inside of Tana once I
Mm.
started using Tana by itself, right? So from what my understanding, like Tana pays and just kind of a lot of the developments that, the creators of Tana are working on, is just making sure that you can always have a way out so that you
Mhm.
can always export all your information if for whatever reason you're not happy with Tana. If I'm not wrong, I think there's a way to export everything as a big JSON file, which you can then import into things like Logseek or Roam. So I really like that they don't try to keep your nodes hostage, right? They don't
Mhm.
try to like say like, hey, you're going to stay with us for the rest of your life because you already have all your valuables here. So yeah, I mean, what do you think of that so far?
That's actually a really good point. If I do anything, I'm kind of bringing it into Tana, and it's kind of just a regular copy paste. But for the most part, in Tana for myself, I'm just doing things in Tana, and never really
Right,
bringing it out. It's kind of a
right,
one-way door for me. But that was one of the things that made me churn away from Rome research, because I was trying it out, and I was taking meetings or taking notes in meetings at work instead of Confluence to see how things would work. And I was like, okay, no, I need to share some of these things. These are great insights. And I would copy it and paste it into Confluence, and there would be all these brackets and parentheses and all sorts of things everywhere. And I would have to clean it up, and it wasn't worth it. So I had to choose to either go back to using Confluence or use Rome Research, and so I just used Confluence. And then, a few months later, I
right.
found Tana.
You actually have like a video on this in your channel, like the matrix. Can you explain a little bit of that? Like it was really nice where Tana sits compared to other apps.
Yeah, I had a matrix where the x-axis was, let's see, it was the usability, how easy and simple it is to use that product. And the y-axis was how powerful, both in, like I called it flex power. So powerful, but in many ways. So the more powerful and the more use cases, the higher you went up that y-axis. So like something like Trello, it's not very powerful, and it's really only focused on task management. So we didn't go very high on the y-axis, but it was very usable. So it's way towards the good side for the usability. And so that's in the bottom right corner, kind of at the opposite end. I've got Tana clustered with Airtable and Notion. So a lot less usable, but far more powerful. And Notion is actually a great case for what they've done up to this point. They've had a lot more years to do these things. They're actually at a really good space of power and usability, but I think that Tana is poised to leapfrog Notion and even Airtable in the power, that flexible power there.
Like, how would you describe Tana in terms of like, is it easy for beginners and then the long-term experience? How do you see that?
I think Tana is deceptive in that. I think, like, from kind of like a visual or like technically what you do perspective, it's actually pretty usable. But like we were just talking about with that community member, like you kind of get in this space where you're not sure what you should do next. And so it's kind of like an abstract blocker to the experience, not necessarily the UI elements and things like that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I were to compare kind of like how easy it is to get started on maybe the tools that I have the most experience, right? So like Tana, Obsidian, Notion. I mean, there's also Logseek, and to be honest, I never really moved too much into Rome research. I did try
Hmm.
it quite a bit, but it never became like my only app. I was testing it essentially for a few months, similar to you. So out of all of those, it's interesting because my experience, like I've done courses on Obsidian and I've made a lot of videos on that. So I had a lot of conversations with people learning Obsidian, and Obsidian is kind of easy to use. You want a very simple setup, like a lot of people are familiar with Notepad, which is like kind of like the most basic app that comes in Windows computers. I guess Apple Notes improved that for Mac users, so that's already better. But Notepad is just nothing more than just a plain document that does nothing, right? All you can do is write text in it. And I don't know if you're familiar with like these kind of old school YouTube videos, but I remember there was a lot of YouTubers that would kind of like make their videos, record the screen, And instead of talking, they would just write in Notepad. It's just kind of a funny experience where people just kind of like communicate through words. It feels like the Tom Riddle diary in Harry Potter. So Notepad is kind of like a prehistoric uh, technology, right? So I've seen some people that I've talked to some people that use that as their main note taking app, and I just think they're psychopaths because they create a new document and it's almost like taking notes in a Word document or a Google document. I find that really weird. Some people do that. There's zero way to search across the whole thing, and there's zero way to connect ideas between different documents. So everything's just kind of standing by itself, right? And then kind of the evolution of software and the evolution of technology in PKM, personal knowledge management, for me has been like, okay, there's Notepad. Obviously, an upgrade from that is already Word documents. But then if we just skip ahead quite a bit, then we have Obsidian, which is very nice because it essentially is a bunch of Notepad documents, plain text files, but all under one same folder, one same roof where you can search things, right? So for me, Obsidian was interesting because it made Notepad users or people that just are familiar with just writing simple text like a Word document, it made that simple. But then Obsidian does get complicated the more you use it, right? So that is Obsidian, right? Then for me, I believe there's that next level of like advanced technology for taking notes, which is an outliner. So I think Rome Research was the first one to really popularize this quite a lot. Of course, there's been things like Workflowy and, Logsig as well. But Rome Research kind of really made the outliner very popular. So just kind of bullet points within bullet points. And now Tana, to me, just kind of gets the best of all worlds and just makes not only what I believe to be a better experience of Rome Research. If I had to describe Tana to someone who's never used it, but maybe is familiar with this other software, I think Tana is a mixture between Rome Research and Notion. That's how I've described it always. And what do you think of that so far? I'll keep going with my rant, but like, what do you think of
I like that description, and that jives with me intuitively because Rome Research and Notion were like the two that I tried and decided that Tana was better for me, kind of because it's that midway point, but trending towards better than both. And you just made me realize something too, that I think another mistake that people tend to make with Tana, especially with any of these like really powerful pieces of software, but Tana especially, they try to put everything in there always, in every aspect. And I still use other technology, or even like super low tech stuff all the time. Like I have an Apple Notes, just one file that I have on my phone that whenever I just think of something, I have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but it's a nice thought. It's not even that I don't know what I would tag it with in Tana. I'm just like, okay, I put that in there and I have a long list of things. And, occasionally I realize, oh, this goes with that project. And, oh, this is that kind of thing. And I'll bring it into Tana. And so there's a lot of things like that I don't go straight to Tana with a lot of things. And eventually I think maybe I will have processes for those things that Tana will be part of it from start to finish. But for now, Tana is not the starting point for a lot of those things. And I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I see a lot of users for Tana kind of trying to brute force every single use case of anything they would do with a computer inside of Tana. And I agree with you that there's certain things that maybe Tana lacks in some sort of functionality that maybe some tools can do slightly better for now. So like in my opinion, like you say, it makes total sense to kind of maybe start it in some other app that maybe is kind of easier for you to just kind of write down and then kind of move it into Tana. Although with that said, like Tana Capture is incredible. The only limitation, and we talked about this before, is just not being able to tag things inside of Tana Capture. I think once they release that feature, I think I'll use a lot more of Tana for capturing ideas on the go on my phone, for instance. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And also my personal desire is for it to go to my day node, not the separate inbox.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's one of my biggest frustrations as well, like with using Tana Capture. Like it's the super tags, which I definitely want that feature to come as soon as possible. And yeah, like so much nicer to go to the daily node, because to me, the daily node, that's a really good innovation that I believe both Rome Research, Obsidian, and now Tana had really used to propel the way that we think. Because the daily node to me is like, honestly, if a modern app doesn't have a daily node, I essentially won't use it. And that is probably the reason why I don't think Notion is the best tool, because it doesn't have daily nodes. And, just kind of going back a little bit of the user experience with these different apps, I think like Obsidian easy to start day one. Aside from the fact that it's kind of like local on your computer, some people might be confused with that. But aside from that, like you have it going, you just start writing. It's like, okay, this is easy. I understand this. It's a Word document that just connects with other Word documents. Like that's essentially what Obsidian is. Then you move into something like Tana, and it's a different experience. I think it takes a little bit of time for people to adapt to it because Notion at the end of the day is kind of more similar towards Obsidian in the sense that it's a bunch of documents that you can join together. It does have like some features like Airtable, which is the aspect of having like almost smart spreadsheets that, they're databases and so on. But so Notion has that advantage. But then, well, again, we have Roam Research, which is more just like bullet points, just outliner and everything. But then you mix Notion and Roam Research, and you have something like Tana, which not only is bullet points with daily notes. You have a daily page for everything that you want to write, almost like today's journal. You can literally write everything in there. Like these days, I don't think I use anything aside from the daily page in Tana. Like everything just lives in there, right? And then the cool thing is that not only can you do that, but now you also have like those smart spreadsheets, smart databases inside of Tana, which replaces a lot of the need for Notion itself. So that is really what I think really makes Tana stand out, because Roam Research, even though it does try to have some of that functionality, I think Tana really improved that. And the idea of the super tag I think it's really going to change the way that note-taking tools are going to approach everything, because like that super tag, really what it does is it converts a simple bullet point into a database that you can do anything with, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? I dropped a lot of stuff, but yeah, what do you think?
So much good stuff there. I want to end with something that jumped in my head at the end when you were talking about super tags. And part of me wonders if someday they'll rename that to something else, because I think that could be one of the mental blockers that kind of trip people up sometimes, because they hear tag and they want to use it as a tag. They'll like what people used to think of as tags, and it's so much more than that. It's like you assigning a category. If you apply the bear super tag to something, that thing becomes a bear. It's not just given a tag of a bear, if that makes sense. It has the teeth. It comes with the claws and the fur and everything. You're not just saying this is a bear. There's all the fields that tell you the length of the claws and everything. I don't know if this metaphor is landing or not.
Yeah, I mean, and that maybe takes us to maybe the nature of what a super tag really is for Tana and how to think about it. Because like you say, I've heard this kind of description, like you use super tags when something is something, so like that's kind of like the keywords that you use. So okay, I write let me try to think of categories. Just give me a random object.
Oh, a sparrow.
Perfect. Yeah, okay. So a sparrow, which would be the bullet point in Tana, you tag it as bird. And like you said, a sparrow is a hashtag bird, right? And that is a really interesting way to approach what a super tag is. It's not so much maybe like a label that you put on something. It's more like a category of things. Is that right? Like, how do you think of that? Because I think that's similar to what you were saying. Right?
Yeah, I'm really liking what I said, that it becomes, it's a transformer. Instead of a thing just being some text, now it's an object that you can have attributes and traits added to, and you can manipulate through all the other things, whether it's commands or it just makes live queries all the more powerful. Everything plays together. Everything kind of, all of the superpowers, they don't have to rely on super tags, but super tags really are kind of like the engine of, they're the nitrous oxide. I don't know. I'm throwing way too many metaphors. Things are getting confusing.
No, but I get you. Like super tags have this ability to convert the way that you interact with your notes, right? So like if you have, I mean, a good example would just be like maybe you're reading a book, right? And let's just say, I don't know, give me what is a book you like? Maybe nonfiction. Like what is something that you like?
Nonfiction.
Yeah.
I don't know. The selfish gene just popped in my head. I don't know why.
Oh, nice. Okay, so that's cool, right? So you have that as a bullet point, and then you want to kind of describe this like, okay, this is a book. And then out of that, you essentially have all of these fields and all of these extra information that you can have, right?
I'd say that ties back to, again, when I tried out Roam Research, and like what really pulled me in was two things. It was the graph, and it was being able to pull in and just make references on the fly, which, especially that's reminiscent of Tana with the super tags and stuff, being able
Yep.
to add that information on the fly. But yeah, and also I got a degree in data science because I'm really interested in data and being able to make connections and everything, especially with your thoughts. And also being an entrepreneur and trying to learn through action, like all of those things come together, and trying to connect your ideas to your actions and tracking progress and metrics and products, and just yeah, I guess it all kind of ties together in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for me, one of the biggest kind of like things that I'm really curious to use these tools for is really for content creation. So that has been a massive thing that has always been a bit of a focus for me. Just kind of how can we use these tools to organize like the content that we do? And I mean, they've been popularly called CMS, so content management systems. And I think a lot of these tools have really the potential for that. But it's really nice because you can really kind of expand it for whatever your needs are, whether you want to use kind of these tools almost like a CRM. I don't even know what the right term is, but like for organizing meetings, I don't know if that's like a meeting manager. I don't know, MM. So just kind of like I see a lot of people really using Tana in a really nice way where if you have a Zoom call with someone or a, in real life call, not call, in real life meeting with someone, it's kind of like a nice place to compile everything that you want to write down with that person. And then every time that you recurrently talk to that person, you have a very nice page inside of Tana where you can see, oh, okay, this is everything that we talked before. And you can use fields and you can use all sorts of systems to kind of like keep that organized. And it's just a one-page view versus what people used to do before, which is just kind of have scattered notes, not knowing where to find what.
Yeah, and this kind of goes into there is a theme, I think, of like there's so many things that you can do in Tana. You can point to another tool that can do that, or maybe even do that one particular thing better. But
Right.
and then this goes back to like just how Tana is architected, and like you compare it to Notion, and like you notice in mature products and more mature companies like Notion that
Yep.
eventually they get to a point where the way that they make breakthroughs in their product and their technology, it eventually becomes mergers and acquisitions, and then
Right.
they bring the technology, bring people into the company that way. Whereas Tana, because of how it's architected, how the product itself works, they are going to be able to keep making leaps and bounds without having to resort to things like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, a lot of these companies kind of evolve. You probably understand a lot more about this, like working for like software companies and so on. But like, yeah, how they are acquired and how they kind of keep evolving. Like, is there any particular app that you remember, just kind of getting acquired and just completely changing?
Happens all the time. Well, what do you mean when you say changing, I guess?
Yeah, I guess maybe the biggest risk that we have as users, I'm just trying to see it from like the point of view of someone who enjoys a particular software and you're kind of committed. Maybe you have your notes there or, if it's a CRM or anything like that. You're just kind of committed to that software. And then something completely out of your control happens, like an acquisition where a company essentially says, okay, these are ours now. We're going to completely change the whole thing. And it just kind of leaves the users kind of like high and dry, like not knowing what to do with everything that they built in there. So, is that a fear that maybe you've ever had about like a tool that you use? Like maybe you know more about that than I.
I wouldn't say it's a fear that I have, but it happens all of the time. A
Right.
product will get acquired by a larger company, and then I think HipChat was, I don't remember what it came. They transitioned it to a completely different product, but it used to be for chatting, and they changed it
Right.
to something else. But a company bought the other smaller company, and they set the team to a completely different area, and they mothballed the original product over time. But when companies do that, it tends to be a product that was having trouble with traction for user acquisition
Right.
and stuff anyway. So you kind of see the writing on the wall for things like that well before it happens.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Like I think I don't know to be honest enough about like the whole controversy that was happening with Rome Research. But I think there were a lot of people that were kind of worried about the direction of they use this tool, they built it according to their needs. And then they, I don't know, like either change it internally that kind of affected the way people perceive the app. To be honest, I just don't know enough about what happened to Rome Research, but I do know there was a bit of controversy in that. I don't know if you know anything about that in particular. No.
I know nothing about that particular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. Like, and that's one thing that I do like about Tana in general. Like, I feel that the creators behind it, like, not only do they want to kind of be like a very strong team that kind of uses user feedback in order to really guide the product into, what direction it's going to take. So I actually think that is important, especially as you get kind of more committed to these tools, to kind of understand who the team behind the tools are. To be honest, Obsidian, the team I really like, I've talked to them a little bit, just kind of in chat and stuff like that. They seem pretty cool. The Tana team, I think it's great because like they're not trying to grow as big as a Notion team, which to be honest, I don't know the exact number of how many people are working in Notion, but I do know it's a much larger team, and kind of Tana wants to keep it still kind of like almost like a family, right? And I find that very reassuring as like in the direction they're going to take and how they do have users' best interests at heart,
Yeah, and I spoke about this in one of my videos, but like I've been watching the Tana team and what they choose to work on and build first, and then they're going to build other stuff later. And the number of things that like I've seen people request, like I want a full mobile app, or I want this thing that Notion has, or this other thing. And they're the type of things that when you're inside an organization like that, you have pressure from
Right.
sometimes it's a C-suite, sometimes it's from the sales part of the organization, sometimes it's from board members, but whatever it is, you have pressure to meet certain goals and metrics. And like whenever these people get inside their head, oh, but Notion has this, why don't we have this? And so it's
Right.
very hard to say no to things like that because they seem so rational. Other things that will end up differentiating you as a product in the long run and serving the customer better in the long run. And I haven't been in any of the meetings, and I have no idea what the long-term roadmap is, but I think I have a sense for what it is. And if I'm correct, then they are making decisions that are going to be long-term beneficial for the customers, and they're making it at the cost of not getting the initial sugar rush of responding to these customer desires that people are shouting out and saying, hey, okay, we got this. Oh, you want this? We also got that. And it's really, really hard to hold the line on something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, that reminds me, like they do have like a feature request system. I think if I'm not wrong, I think it's at ideas.tana, maybe .inc, something like that. But yeah, like they have a lot of requests, like all sorts of things that people kind of just want, and they say like you said, like right, Notion does this, why doesn't Tana do it? Tana do it. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, they have to stay clear to what is their vision, what are the most important things that they want to innovate on. Maybe people just don't even know what they want yet because it doesn't exist, right? So yeah, like, I mean, I totally understand that. And from my understanding, I mean, and seeing these products evolve, I know it just takes time. Like there's certain things that me, just from a selfish standpoint of what I want to achieve, I do have like a feature request in that website, right? That has gotten pretty popular. I think it's like on the top 3 or something like that, which is like for getting long form writing inside of Tana. Essentially, that to me would allow me to do a lot of the things that I do in Obsidian inside of Tana. Being able to write full blog posts, being able to almost like write full emails that I can essentially just copy paste, not bullet point things, because everything in Tana is a bullet point, but rather just kind of like, headings, paragraphs, and everything. And they not only, address that these things are important, they kind of reassure you like, hey, I mean, this is something that we do keep in mind. Like, I find that very reassuring as a user in general, right? And that's really cool that they keep what you say into account, but I also do respect that they do have their other priorities, the things that they want to innovate on. And a lot of these things, like, they're just not as simple as we as users sometimes think they are. It's like, why can't you just add this? Like, maybe it just takes a weekend, why don't you just work on a weekend on this? It's like, no, I'm sure like there's a lot more into it, and they want to make sure that they have a coherent system that just works, without breaking things and without kind of like, maybe, like you say, a sugar rush. Like maybe we now have this feature, but all of a sudden by next week that breaks the other core features, you know? So yeah, I do respect the way that they're dealing with it.
Yeah, and one thing that I think people who have not worked in an organization like this, they don't understand is like there's so many things that happens, but one of the things that happens is when you build one of these features to make people happy, you have to still you're not done with that feature once you release it. You have to maintain it. You have to make sure, and every time you build something else somewhere else, you need to make sure that that thing does not break that feature that you made just to make people happy. I can't. One of the places that I worked, there was a developer who saw some code that he checked. It's not referenced anywhere. No subroutine calls it up or anything. It's just not used. So he deleted the code, and it broke the product. No one knew why. But so he put it back in and the product was back up. But yeah, when you do these things just to kind of make people happy, there are risks that come with that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like you say, like it might be technically simple to implement like a simple feature that people want, but it's definitely not simple for the team to maintain that and make sure it doesn't break and like it's coherent with everything else. So that's a really good point. I was thinking also, like I would just wanted to ask you, like how much of AI do you currently use in Tana? Like, have you played much with that? What do you think?
We really don't use AI in Tana. For now, it's a nice from my perspective, for my use cases, it's a nice trick. It's a nice thing to play with. But the ways that I would actually use it, I would want there would need to be some new features, which I bet are things that they're working on. But for instance, like I want to be able to communicate with a particular GPT that does a very particular job and in a very unique circumstance. And I can't do that yet. But I am sure that in the future, I'll be able to accomplish that in Tana or possibly something even more impressive.
Right. Yeah, no, I do know what you mean. Like, at the end of the day, like, you know, I just live in ChatGPT, right? Like ChatGPT is a place where I do all my work, or a bunch of stuff, right? I'm doing research. I'm kind of like correcting grammar, just doing a bunch of stuff, generating images for different projects and so on. And at the end of the day, like, in my opinion, like a lot of tools that have built-in AI, for the most part, I will say it's a gimmick. What I do like about Tana is that they manage to integrate it in ways that are more advanced than just like asking a question in a bullet point. Because yeah, that feature is kind of like just for people that want to play with it. They want to see how it works. But one thing that I do like quite a lot is like you can have fields in a super tag and you can ask questions that kind of like systematically or in batch AI can help you do so I like when a tool implements some AI feature that isn't possible in ChatGPT, right? And I think Tana is definitely heading that direction, you know?
Yep.
What do you think of that? Like, have you ever played maybe like with fields, AI fields in Tana yet?
Yeah, so I would say there's actually kind of like a category of stuff that I actually would use in Tana with AI even right now. But I haven't bothered to set it up because like the time to implement versus the benefit that I get from it is just not there. And then there's a lot of things where it's like I don't trust the AI to do it, like to determine which tag to apply to a line of text. I'm like, no, I'll do that myself. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best features, because I agree with that. Like there's sometimes a workflow that you might want to achieve, let's say in Tana, right? And again, like sometimes brute forcing certain workflows just is a bit of a waste of time in my opinion. But like there's certain things that if you do understand some of the core features that Tana is able to achieve, and you do develop the workflow leveraging the what is it called, like the strengths that Tana has, then just to kind of give you an example, there's I believe, I think he works in Tana. I can't remember how you pronounce his name, but Stian.
Oh,
you know. Do you have any clue how to pronounce? I'm sorry if you're watching this.
I assume it's a shortened version of Christian, so it's probably Stian.
Probably Stian. Yeah. So I was watching a video of his on YouTube, and I don't know if you've seen like some of the templates that he shares and some of the AI stuff that he shares sometimes in the community, but I watched one in specific that I was like, okay, this is genius. And what he was doing was like he had a bunch of words. He was learning Latin, right? And I resonated with that because I've also been learning Latin for a few years. I have like Latin tattoos. I have like stuff like that. And he was talking literally about a book that I read every now and again on like learning Latin. And it's all written in Latin and it's meant to kind of like walk you through getting familiar with like simple vocabulary, but by telling you stories. So it's a book completely in Latin for beginners that are just learning Latin. Either way, the whole thing is that there's a lot of words that you might want to, in his case, he said he wanted to do flashcards for that. He wanted to kind of start having like words and he wanted to do that in Tana. And of course, like there is space repetition software that is kind of like meant for that. Like Anki, I have another one that I recommended in my channel before called Mochi. And even like, to be honest, RemNote is pretty nice because have you ever played with RemNote?
That's another one that I've used actually. Yeah, I really like that. That was actually very usable, but relatively less power compared to something like Tana.
That's the thing. Yeah. So I definitely think Tana is going to be able to kind of take some of the best features of things like RemNote and use it with all of Tana's core strengths. And I think that is why I believe that Tana is long-term going to be the absolute best app. And I already think it is in a lot of ways, but like the potential it has is just massive, right? So like, okay, either way, like the workaround that Stian was doing was kind of like what RemNote is able to do, which is like build flashcards inside of, your outline or your bullet points. So he kind of made a system, which I was very impressed by, like the fact that you can like essentially develop your own mini product, your own mini app inside of Tana. And he had like a flashcard system. But what I really like about what he was doing is he used AI, he used integration with, OpenAI. So he had ChatGPT being able to like take a look at the fields in that super text. So let's say like the super text is Latin words and you would have a word like nihilo, right? You would have a word like nihilo which means nothing. And then that word, you super tag it as a Latin word. Then you run that command, which uses AI and fills up all of the fields below it. And he had like some good ones, like use this word in a sentence in Latin. Maybe give me that translation of that sentence. Give me the etymology of this word, and that I love. So like for language learning, for learning concepts, for kind of systematically being able to in batch, maybe using AI, organize a bunch of information that otherwise it would require a lot of copy paste in ChatGPT. Yeah. That I thought was genius. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there are things that could be done even right now, like very impressive things. But like I said, amount of time for me to implement them and the benefit I would get, not quite there. But so I would like some, like there's already people who have done like you take a note and you tag it with something and it automatically, AI will ask you questions or come up with reasons why that statement could be false and things like that. I like things like that. But that's also where I would want to access a particular GPT. Someone that like philosophy GPT, not just like, because you can input the prompt, you are a world-class philosopher or whatever. Now answer, but I want like, I want the very particular philosopher GPT that has been trained by me or someone with a very particular use case. And then I really know what to do with that tool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really nice. Like to me, kind of like a lot of the potential of AI is like you say, kind of like training your own like models. Where is this information coming from? And have you ever played with the app Mem? Do you know Mem?
I think maybe I play with it, but I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So either way, like for anyone that isn't familiar with what Mem does, it's a very limited app in terms of what it can do for note taking in general. But it has one killer feature that I just think like, I really believe all note taking apps are going to be forced to implement this. And what it does is essentially it has a chat similar to ChatGPT, but it's trained on all of your notes. So you can ask it questions based on all of your notes. And, Mem is essentially as simple as Apple Notes in the sense that, it just knows. Like I was talking before, it's kind of like document after document after document. It's just a bunch of nodes everywhere, but it all forms part of essentially a database where you can ask questions using AI. And that way, like that to me is kind of like the most advanced way to search with AI. And, I really believe all note-taking apps they're going to be forced to have that feature because it's just so good. Just excellent.
The other thing besides AI, which I think AI is going to be very exciting for future Tana. Again, partly because of the architecture of Tana. It makes it the most machine readable possible. But also, I'm excited about future integrations. For instance, like
Mm.
I'm trained I'm not trained in Figma, but like I have years of experience in Figma and other software for creating UI. And now imagine I create a prototype in Figma and I'm able to hook that prototype into data from Tana. Now I've thought about this, and this isn't a category of products that exists yet, but I'm calling it lightware. It's software that's built on other software.
Yep.
And yeah, this is what I'm looking forward to in the future. Maybe I'm wrong about all of the details, but I think something like that is coming where
Right.
I can just create a user interface and hook up to some data of my own personal data, or it can hook up to anyone's data that I send the prototype to. And it's just an instant personalized application.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, the potential for that, even what they already done, like has already built in like a template system that
Hmm.
even though I really think it's gonna keep adapting and it's just gonna be better, it already has like some of these ideas in mind. Like even the one that I was describing before, like Stian, he kind of like built this like system for flashcards for language learning. I mean, even he like that is even a template you can sell. It has AI features that you can already use. So like once Tana is able to connect through the API with other tools like Figma or anything like that. To me, the
Hmm.
potential of that is massive because I mean, just from the standpoint of what I've been doing quite a lot, kind of like, getting clients for one-on-one coaching for like the separate stuff that I do on my channel, which, is kind of like helping creators build their own businesses essentially. I message people on Twitter or X and I message people on different platforms. And what I really wanted to develop is kind of having a very streamlined CRM system where I can like save people's contact and know exactly what have we talked about and stuff like that. And until now, I think like doing that in Tana is excellent. Like I think it works for sure. But having a bit of like more of even a Chrome extension or just having some way to send data quickly and
Hmm.
revisiting it inside of Twitter itself and being able to see my Tana information inside of Twitter itself, things like that. I definitely would like to see a lot more of in the future. And I think the potential for like integrating tools in the future in Tana could be endless, could be massive.
Hmm. Yep. And because of how Tana is architected, like it can become a JSON file, anything, any part of it, or the whole thing,
Right.
or whatever structure can be. It's at least possible, if not easy, technically, to transform to whatever would be usable for other products.
Right. So, I mean, that's definitely the advantage of, Tana has been kind of building the foundations. I wouldn't say necessarily slowly, like it's still an app that has been going at a good pace in terms of development, but they definitely kind of, you can tell that they've been making sure that everything works at every level instead of, like you said, like building a bunch of features and then those things
Hmm.
breaking. So I think even though we might have to be patient for some of the ideal workflows we would like to have already, it's just good to know that they're building those foundations so strongly that when those things come, they're going to be robust, they're going to work, and all sorts of things are going to be possible, right?
Totally. And here's actually
Yeah.
a fringe benefit of the complexity and how hard it is to learn and everything. Is that
Yeah.
it's going to be a little while for the perfection to come, but while you're waiting for that, be messy and learn Tana in and
Mm,
out, and you'll be so ready when the perfect day arrives.
right.
It only makes sense to start now while it's not perfect, actually.
Yeah. And already Tana is capable of so much by itself, right? Even though there's some features like integrations with other tools and things like that, even those things are kind of like later down the line, we don't know when. Kind of like everything that is capable to do and just kind of like already starting to build your system and using these tool for meetings, for customers, for I don't know, all sorts of things, like even book notes, like anything that you already like people are already doing in other apps. I think there's a massive advantage of already starting using Tana for that because in the future, when you're able to integrate, I can think of like the example that I was saying, like connecting your Twitter contacts inside of Tana, doing a bunch of things like the Figma thing, maybe like external task managers that integrate with your tasks inside of Tana. Like the possibilities are so endless that really getting started in Tana now can only set you up for success later in the future for having a very streamlined system that works for anything you work on, right?
Yeah. And I just realized something just now.
Yeah.
So because Tana can actually do, pretty much anything. Let's assume there's only 12 possible things that could ever be done. here's task management, note taking, and then 10 others, whatever.
Yeah.
So Tana can and will be able to do all of those. But,
Mhm.
anything that does everything, it's never going to be able to do any of those things the best of anything in the market. But it's going to be able to do 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 for all 12 of those things at least, At least, let's say
Right.
7 out of 10. Serviceable, And then for anyone who does any particular thing, any job or whatever, they're going to want 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for like 2 things of those 12. Okay, you can use 2 other products for those 2 things, and those 2
Right.
things will talk with Tana, and the other 10
Mm.
things Tana already does even better than you probably even need. And so that's how I see the long-term usefulness of Tana.
Wow, yeah, that's really nice because to be honest, like that's a debate that I've always had. Kind of like whether I want to try to have everything in one tool versus like spreading it out across several tools. Like you said, like maybe there's a tool that does task management literally a 10 out of 10 and Tana does it like a 7 out of 10. If it connects really well with the type of work that you're doing, then in that case, it might be worth it to just do it in Tana, right? Versus like trying to get like a much better experience, but you have the diminishing returns of like maybe it's a 10 out of 10 app, but it's so disconnected from all of your other stuff that you still end up doing a lot of manual work. And yeah, like hopefully integrations and like automations between different tools using Zapier or anything like that through APIs, hopefully that can get to a point that is perfect. But at the moment, like at least from my experience, a lot of integrating different note-taking tools isn't always as good as we hope. So hopefully in the future that gets better. But that is why I believe like, starting to invest your time and energy into something like Tana is definitely a good return because Tana will have the potential of, like you say, like having a straight 7 system where like, all throughout is a solid 7 across different areas. It might be 10 in some, it might be a bit lower in some. But for the most part, you don't have to deal with the headache of like having a billion tools and it's still good enough, And that, I guess that's the appeal of why people love Notion. To be honest, in my opinion, Notion does everything at a 5 out of 10. And something that's a little bit higher. To be honest, like the 5 out of 5, 5 out of 10 for me, Notion is just not worth it. Doing everything in Notion, I think is a bad idea because in my opinion, it's just not good enough.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it does some things really well and does some things really bad. That is why Notion long term, I think it's just going to break. It's a very cluttered system. I don't think the template system that they have is just it's very ghetto, right? It's like, let's copy this thing in here and let's put it there. It doesn't integrate with anything else.
It was
properly.
groundbreaking, but it's not. Yeah. I don't think it's the future. Yeah. It's not good enough for the future.
Exactly. And I think Tana is already headed in the right direction. They've innovated with templates, even just the ability to like having those commands, having AI built into the template and just kind of having systems where if you click a button, it does something. And more importantly, just still integrates very nicely with the rest of your system. It's not a separate page that stands by itself, but it integrates within your whole workspace. So I think the future of Tana templates might be maybe like a renaissance for like what Notion started, which again is impressive, but is medieval ages at this point, right? Like Notion templates, medieval ages. Hopefully Tana can improve things with the renaissance of templates and all sorts of things.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so we've been talking for over an hour. This is actually really great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
man, for sure. Yeah, it's been great, Nick. Like we talked a lot of really cool stuff. I think, to be honest with you, like this is something like this type of conversation is something that I've been looking for inside of Tana because I'm personally a big fan of like long form content. Sometimes I don't want to sit and watch like a tutorial on YouTube, but I would like to hear people talking about the conceptual aspects of like what are the implications of using a tool like Tana. So to me, this is pretty cool. Like, I mean, what do you think about that? And if not, I'll just start kind of like closing things.
Yeah, this is energizing. I love being able to dive and go lateral, whatever makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, it's really cool. So yeah, for anyone listening here in Twitter, thank you, Tiago. I saw that you just joined. So sorry, man, we're about to close this up. But by the way, anyone that's listening in Twitter, we are going to post this in YouTube. And then for anyone that, wants to hear more from us or you want to participate a bit more, I'm just going to tag Tana Central, which is the new page that we have in here so that you can take a look at that. Also, we do have a community. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll also put this in the description. But yeah, Tana Central, that is a link community. That's a really cool place where we're going to give you more insights into the things that we learn, new ideas that we would like to share, as well as that's a place where you can ask questions and really get to understand a lot more about Tana. It's just a nice community that you can join. And of course, we do have resources there and so on. If you're watching this on YouTube, check out the descriptions where you can join our community. You can follow us on Twitter, and you can keep an eye for more live conversations like this. So yeah, any final thoughts, Nick?
No, I think that settles it.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers.